Now, the phone-in show is open for business. The question I have for you is, how do we stop Muslim-on-Muslim hate crime? Now, you might think, what are you talking about? That's something that perhaps middles in the Middle East. Not here in the UK, surely. Well, the organisation that monitors anti-Islamic hate crimes, Tell Mama, has been telling the BBC Asian network that it's seen attacks on the Ahmadiyya community and between Sunni and Shias rise in the last 12 months. But why is there so much tension between Muslims in this country? Where does this intolerance come from? Is it taught whilst growing up? Is prejudice imported from other countries where minority sects are persecuted? Only this week, leaflets calling for Ahmadis to be killed were found at a mosque in South London. And of course, last month, a shopkeeper, a very popular shopkeeper in Glasgow, was apparently murdered in what police describe as a sectarian attack. Now, what's the answer to stop more of this happening? Is enough being done to tackle the hate? Were you brought up to think of Ahmadis as not being Muslims? Were you taught that Shias were not Muslims? Is this coming from the home? Is it coming from the internet? Is it coming from imported imams? Tell me what you think. How can we stop Muslim-on-Muslim hate crime? 81869 on the text, email Nihal at bbc.co.uk or give us a call on 03459 440 445 and let's start talking after the news with Bella Shah.
Our top story on Asian Network: members of the Ahmadiyya community in the UK fear they could be targeted by extremist Muslims in sectarian attacks. It's because they're a minority sect who believe in a prophet after Muhammad. Fayaz Mughal is from Tell Mama, a group which monitors Islamophobic abuse in the UK. He says there's been an increase in the number of anti-Ahmadi incidents reported to the organisation.
We've had material where they are regarded as individuals who should be exterminated, calling Ahmadiyas cockroaches, calling Ahmadiyas monkeys, calling Ahmadiyas individuals who should not have any right to life.
And Nihal will also be discussing it straight after this bulletin.
Nihal. Bella, thank you very much indeed for the news and sport. So, how do we stop it? Muslim-on-Muslim hate crime. According to the organisation that monitors such crimes against Muslims in this country, the organisation's called Tell Mama, by the way, in the last 12 months alone, 3 incidents per month involving attacks on Ahmadi community are reported to the group. Now, you may say, well, 3 incidents per month. Now, let's put it into context. There are only 30,000 Ahmadis in the UK. They also say reports of incidents between Sunni and Shia Muslims are on the rise. But why is there so much tension? And are things getting worse? Now, that's difficult for you yourself to say whether it's getting worse. But why is it happening in the first place? Are you brought up to think of Shias as non-Muslims? Are you brought up to think as Ahmadis as non-Muslims? As an Ahmadi, are you brought up to think of yourselves as being hated upon by both Sunni and Shia? If you're Shia, are you brought up to think of Sunnis as non-Muslims? And what can we do to stop this from happening? Only last month, it is believed a Glasgow shopkeeper, Asad Shah, was murdered because he was from the Ahmadi community. So are different groups of Muslims brought up to dislike one another? Is this coming from home? Is it in the mosques? Is it being imported from imams from countries like Pakistan, where Shias and Ahmadis are persecuted? And what's the solution? How do we change these attitudes? 81869 is the text. Email Nihal at bbc.co.uk. And please, get in contact with me and tell me if you think this is not a thing. That there are isolated incidents, but ultimately Muslims of all different backgrounds regard themselves as part of one ummah. Is that the case? Or is it very different? Just speaking to people in the office this morning, it came across that some people were brought up to think of Ahmadiyas as non-Muslims. And this was normal. Someone was saying at university, their friends said, Ahmadiyas are not Muslims. Why is this the case? And this is leading to, as Tell Mama put it, an increase on Muslim hate crime. So what can we do to stop this from happening? What needs to be done? The sectarianism, which of course people like ISIS love to exploit. Now tell me, How do we stop Muslim on Muslim hate crime? And the reason we're asking this question is because Tell Mama UK have said that this is on the rise. Tensions between the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and other Muslim communities, Sunni, Shia. You will, of course, be aware that in a South London mosque, leaflets were found calling for extreme acts against Ahmadiyya Muslims. Also, of course, there's the terrible case of Mr. Shah, the shopkeeper, very popular shopkeeper in Glasgow, who was murdered, and police are most certainly looking at the angle that he could have been murdered because he was an Ahmadiyya Muslim. Now, this is something, unfortunately, that takes place in Pakistan. I've, in fact, interviewed people who have been very much the victims of this. I remember interviewing a young man whose brother was killed on his wedding day, and he was an Ahmadiyya Muslim. And, of course, in Pakistan, you can't even call yourselves Ahmadiyya Muslims. But this is something wider than even hatred towards the Ahmadiyya community. Because at a time when the Muslim community is facing challenges from without, certainly negative stereotyping on the media, but also, of course, social media, quite virulent and offensive attacks upon Muslims. And that's not to mention women who are, by large, bearing the brunt of Islamophobia on the streets of this country, being spat at, etc., or sworn at. You would think that different Muslim communities would come together. And, as someone pointed out to me on Twitter, saying we need to talk about our similarities rather than our differences to foster understanding. That was from Jamila Tweet on Twitter. Well, let's speak to Khalil Youssef, Deputy Director of Communications for the Ahmadi community. Khalil, good morning.
Good morning, Nihal. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for joining us, Khalil.
Thank you.
What can be done to stop this happening?
First of all, I think it's a great question that you've asked, because often we talk about, or we hear in the news about Muslims or so-called Muslims and extremists that are committing acts of terrorism and extremism against people outside the Muslim community. And the challenges that Muslims have within the Muslim community itself is often seen as being too difficult for the media or anybody else to take on. So, I mean, I commend you for taking on the subject. But I think that the starting point really for all Muslims is that they need to accept that every individual, whichever community they're from, whether that's Ahmadi, Sunni, Shia, or any other community within the Muslims, has the right to be able to self-identify as a Muslim if they choose to do so. Freedom of religion is a fundamental tenet of Islam, and I think that is the starting point in trying to deal with some of the challenges that we have within Islam.
Because, of course, am I right in saying that no Muslim has the right to say that someone who regards himself as a Muslim is not a Muslim? Takfir, is that the term?
Well, takfir is really to do with apostasy, but you're right. I think the Holy Quran is very clear in saying that there shall be no compulsion in religion, and what that means is that nobody is entitled to force anybody else to believe a religion. Everyone has their own choice, and the Holy Quran also, I don't want to get theological because it might be difficult for your audience, but the Holy Quran also makes clear in chapter 22, verse 79, that you are entitled to follow the faith of your father. And what that means is that no individual or group can claim to monopolize the term of Muslim, because that term existed even before Islam itself.
So, Khalil, tell me what it's like in terms of reaching out to mainstream, as it were, and I say mainstream just simply because of a numbers game. There's 30,000 Ahmadis in this country. When reaching out to mosques and saying, look, let's start a dialogue, do you find on the whole they are receptive to that or resistant to that?
Look, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and I repeat this intentionally on your program, is always open to speak with anybody who pursues a path of peace. And that includes those groups that really have a very clear issue with us as a community. We're always available to open our doors, open our hearts, shake hands with individuals who want to pursue peace. So we have, as you know, peace symposiums every year. Those happen nationally, those happen regionally. And we do extend invitations to people within the Muslim community and people from all other faiths and people of no faith as well. And that offer still stands.
And what about going out to their mosques, for instance? I mean, because their mosque should be your mosque.
Indeed. I mean, I think that...
If you, for instance, were to contact one of the big mosques, East London Mosque or Birmingham Central, and say we would love to come and have a dialogue with you and talk to you, do you think they would be receptive to that?
I hope they would.
Have you tried it?
They would. No, I haven't personally tried, but certainly if we were to be invited to a non-Ahmadi Muslim mosque, then we would certainly do our best to attend, and we would love to have an open and honest dialogue about Islam and how all groups can stand together against all forms of discrimination and extremism, because it's important in this climate, and you mentioned it perfectly in your earlier narrative, that really it's important for Muslims not just to deal with their internal challenges, but the external ones as well. And how do you deal with that? Well, you deal with that by ensuring that Islam is not associated with extremism and hate, but actually that the many, many, many beautiful teachings of Islam are put forward to society, and society can see what a positive benefit Islam has. And Muslims, I think, whether that's Sunni, Shia, or Ahmadi, or any other group, do need to work together in order to ensure that the name of Islam is protected.
Would you feel personally confident or nervous about visiting a mosque, a non-Ahmadi mosque?
I would probably feel a little bit nervous because some Muslims don't accept us as Muslims, and I'm not sure what reception I would receive. But if I was to be invited, I would certainly go.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting in itself, isn't it, that you would feel nervous to go to a non-Ahmadi mosque? I mean, that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the truth. We can't get away from the fact that there are divisions within the Muslim community. There's no point in hiding that. You know, there is, in truth, a genuine risk to Ahmadi Muslims in the UK from some other Muslims, but that's not all of them. And that risk comes from certain Asian Muslims who have a hatred for Ahmadi Muslims, but that's not everybody. You know, and in saying that, I don't want to demonize other Sunni or other Shia Muslims. You know, there are many Muslims out there who do have a negative view about Ahmadis, but that isn't actually their fault. It is the message that they have heard from a few imams. They haven't had the opportunity to go to the Holy Quran. They haven't had an opportunity to read the Hadith or study the Sunnah, and they take as gospel what they hear from imams who have a responsibility to be honest and open and truthful. And I appreciate, you know, the word truth in itself has all sorts of definitions, but the reality is that some people I often hear, they say, well, the kalama is, there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and Muhammad is the last prophet. And in fact, the word last doesn't even appear in the kalma, and they don't know that, and that's just the most basic tenet of Islam. So I make this point, Nihal, not to have a theological discussion, but to say that, you know, we all do have a responsibility to try and talk about what Islam actually says. And whilst the Asad Shah incident is extremely sad, not just for Ahmadis but for all Britons, I think that we should take this opportunity. We're talking about Ahmadis and sectarianism and all of these issues. It's a really good opportunity, actually, to talk about what Islam really says. And I think all of us from all communities need to take that opportunity.
Khalil Yusuf, thank you very much indeed. Let's speak to Sharia Khatun, who is chair of the Shanaz Network, which is a network of women tackling radicalisation and extremism. Sharia, good morning.
Good morning to you as well. Very interesting conversation. I've heard what Khalil has said, and I do agree with most of what he said. One other thing I'd like to point out, though, is that, look, whatever congregation you belong to, at the end of the day, the one big thing we have in common is that we're all Muslims. And therefore, we have that huge commonality. And that actually does expand beyond Islam. And I say this to my friends who belong to other religions or of no faith, is that, look, all of us, actually, when you delve into it, we have a lot more in common than we have differences amongst us. Why don't we celebrate those things that we have in common rather than fight over the small things that we disagree with? I mean, should we not be thinking about all those children who are dying in famine-affected countries? We have huge issues here in this country on our doorstep with young people in gangs or taking drugs. Let's get together and talk about how we can alleviate those issues.
Sharia, though, let's be real about what's going on in a grassroots sense. Just anecdotally speaking to people in my office today, there was certainly history that being brought up, they regarded Ahmadiyya Muslims as not Muslims. Now, this isn't an extremist view. The people that, well, they're not extremists. This was just a mainstream view by certain Muslims.
No, I wouldn't say it's a mainstream view. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Sunni Muslim. However, I've worked with the Alevi community. I've got friends who are Shia Muslims, and I've never considered them as a non-Muslim. I mean, that's
so you would right. So you would 100% regard an Ahmadiyya Muslim as a Muslim.
They are. Of course, that's what I said earlier on when I came onto your program. That's whatever congregation you belong to. At the end of the day, we're all Muslims. We all pray to the same Allah. We do our salah.
Isn't it a shame, though?
Read the Quran.
It's a shame that Khalil said that he would feel nervous going into a mosque that was not an Ahmadiyya mosque.
Well, I was hoping he wouldn't say that. I mean, I've been to a mosque run by Alevis, and I was hugely welcomed. I spoke to the trustees. I did quite a bit of work with them in East London. And it should have been. We have so many mosques here in East London, and I'm just talking about East London purely because I'm from East London. But I'm hoping that people from different congregations don't feel that way. It is about relationship building at the end of the day. And however, I'm not disregarding that there are some people out there, some Muslims, who consider Shias as non-Muslims, and I think that's wrong. When you read the Quran, when you are doing your salah, you've read your kalmas, you are a Muslim.
Is that being imported, or is that something that is generated from here?
I think it's a bit of both.
Right.
And I think, and this is why we need to celebrate the commonalities more than actually, dig at the things that we don't always agree on. And like I said, there are more commonalities than disagreements. And it is sad that somebody like Khalil feels nervous about going into a mosque that is not Ahmadi. And it shouldn't be like that. Mosques are a place where Muslims should be going to feel to pray in comfort without being threatened. And there shouldn't be a power base there. You go to a mosque, you're a Muslim, you go and do your salah, and that's that. You shouldn't feel afraid. And it is actually sad that Khalil is feeling this way.
Okay, Sharia, thank you very much indeed. Let's speak to Monty, who got in contact with us. 81869 is the text, or you can call us on 03459 440 445. It's quite interesting hearing from Khalil saying that he would be nervous to visit a non-Ahmadiyya mosque. Why is that the case? How do we stop Muslim on Muslim hate crime? Monty, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good, mate. How do you think this can be stopped?
Well, in reality of things, we've become a nation of, as I said in my text as well, we've become a nation of Google scholars. We believe everything that's online, we believe everything that other people say, and we're very common to, blind following. Now, in any religion, in any aspect, when you look at a religion, you need to study it. You need to, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, or anything, you need to study the scriptures. And in order to do that, you need to put your heart into it. Now, it's well and good enough to say that, yes, I am a Muslim, yes, I am an Ahmadiyya or a Shia. But you need to look into those sects. And if it makes logical sense to you, then yes, you go for that religion. And a lot of people, I think, nowadays listen to our people in the mosques or our leaders, so-called leaders, I say. Reason being is because no religion or no sect can pull out hatred from anything. So extremism is something which is built by our leaders and fed to us. And once it's fed to us, our minds are like, they're blocked, they're boxed, and we don't see anything else. So when someone says something to you, like, for example, a Shia is not a Muslim, or Ahmadi is not a Muslim, or someone else is not a Muslim, we believe it because, oh, you know what, this is what I've known all my life, and this is what they're telling me, and they're the leaders, and that is it.
The problem is, do you think, Monty, that this is going to get much worse?
Of course it's going to get much worse. It's got worse over the years, whether it's in other countries or in Britain. I've had debates with my friends, and not like vicious debates, but just in the fact of what do you believe and what do you believe, and it's become heated, not because what.
So amongst your own friends, it got heated.
Yeah, amongst our own friends, because it's what they believe, it's what they've been told. And when someone tells you that whatever your mother and father told you is wrong, or this is the proof for it, they don't like to hear it, because no one likes to hear something that you've known all your life.
Yeah, well, that's tough. Monty, thank you, my friend. I know you've got to get to work at 10:30, so thank you for taking time out to speak to us. Imran is in Manchester. After that, we've got Nasir in Glasgow. We've also got Mansour Clark, who's an imam from the Ahmadiyya community. 03459 440 445 is the number. I'd like to hear from people who would like to get involved in our conversation about Muslim or Muslim hate crime. Imran in Manchester, good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think, my friend?
It's a topic that brings out high emotion. Anything that's related to religion, I think, purely because of the closeness that people feel to their religion or their belief, brings out high emotions, and we find ourselves in this situation. Not that is a negative on religion at all. I mean, I myself, I'm a Sunni Muslim, and first of all, I just want to completely, pay my respects to the family and also the poor man who was so horribly killed.
Mr. Asad Shah, yes.
Mr. Asad Shah, that's right, yes. Now, moving on to sort of the topic in more specifics, we have to understand why it is that we have this kind of belief system amongst the different sects of Islam that says, well, actually, this group is not Muslim and this group isn't. And more specifically with regards to the Ahmadis, in the Indian subcontinent, and this is something that your previous callers, I think, didn't touch upon, the callers, was that they are actually not classed as Muslims. So in Pakistan, for example, their mosques aren't called mosques. They are not classed as Muslims. They are not able to use the terminology as being a Muslim. And this is something that we obviously have to take into account in this debate also. And, one thing that I will say is that, why is that? Why do we find that people have this, especially when it comes to the Ahmadis, that why do we class them as being non-Muslim? Is that, one of the main reasons is that, they believe that without going into a deep theological discussion, that there was a prophet about 100 years ago. So within, our grandparents' lifetime, a prophet came to this planet with a message from God, which, going back to my initial point at the start of the call, when you have a closeness and a deep sort of feeling towards a particular religion, and somebody comes along and tries to completely change everything that you know about that religion and everything that you've ever been taught, ever read about, it suddenly, in some people, unfortunately, rings alarm bells. And the best way, or the proper way to tackle such sort of indifference is to debate, dialogue, interfaith relations. However, what we do find is that in small minorities, like we found with Asad Shah, was that people, take these abhorrent actions.
Quite. I mean, Imran, were you brought up to think of Ahmadis as being non-Muslim?
Yes.
Right.
That is correct.
So that was just normal. That was a given.
That was a given. And then, as you sort of get older, though, I believe that everybody has their own mind and their own free will, and you really need to kind of look into these things and to sort of read up about, well, why is that? Why is that feeling amongst the majority of Muslims that Ahmadis are not Muslim? Why is that? And it's like it goes back to the initial point that I made, that that the mainstream Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims regard the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to be the final and last messenger. There's no messenger after that. And if someone or a group of people come along and say, well, there was a prophet and he was about 100 years ago in our grandparents' lifetime, that can sort of sometimes cause these tensions amongst the different groups. And I will say again, that does not give the right to anybody to take violent action against one group or another. No religion teaches that. Peace is the main message of all the religions, and that's what we need to have in the forefront of our minds: tolerance, debate, dialogue. Right. And also, just finally, just to sort of put it into context, I mean, I think that there has been a big sort of furore with regards to this awful incident, but we need to put it into context in terms of how many of these interfaith killings between Muslims, especially, has there been? And in my lifetime, I'm 36 now. I don't remember there being that many, thankfully.
Well, as you heard from our previous caller, Monty was saying that, of course, it's going to get worse. And also, as well, someone on Facebook, on our BBC Asia Network Facebook page, has talked about this influence of Wahhabi Islam. Omar Ahmed on Facebook said, when I was growing up in the 1980s, there was none of this nonsense. If you said you were a Muslim, that was good enough. You were a brother. As the Wahhabi influence grew along with the number of hate preachers, we've forgotten the message and example of our Prophet, that only Allah knows our deen. There is no compulsion in Islam. That hate is from shaitan and not what the Prophet practiced.
And I would completely agree with that. I mean, what we find is with these crackpot terrorists that are popping up all over the place, do aspire to be with this Wahhabi ideology, which is of intolerance, hardline, strict, without any proper interpretation of the classical texts of the Quran, of the Sunnah. And what we find is that again, a small minority, which is what it is. It is a small minority, people who create these abhorrent incidents and killings. Their voice gets heard first because, obviously, of the nature of the acts that they are committing.
Imran, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's speak to Manzoor Clark, who's an imam from the Ahmadiyya community. Manzoor, good morning.
Good morning, Nihal. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for joining us, Mansoor. Tell me, would you feel nervous going into a non-Ahmadiyya mosque?
It depends who I'm going in with, to be honest. I've got a number of non-Ahmadi friends. I myself, I'm a Caucasian lad. So, I've got many friends who are Muslim, non-Muslim, indeed non-Ahmadi as well. And I think it's more about building an element of friendship and a relationship with the people around us. I've got many non-Ahmadi friends who are Muslims, but are happy to call me a Muslim, who are happy to actually invite me to their home, invite me to their mosque. But unfortunately, I can't speak I can't say the same thing for absolutely all Muslims or all non-Ahmadis.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that, Mansour. Mansour, is it going to get worse? I mean, describe to me the shockwaves that went through your community after Mr. Shah was murdered. Did it send shockwaves?
It did. Unfortunately, we were all horrified when we heard about the news of Mr. Shah. You've said he was a very well-liked person in his community as well. And I think what happened was, the shockwaves were there. We were horrified to hear it, but actually it paved the way for something very positive as well. I mean, just yesterday, for example, there was we launched a scheme in Glasgow, in fact in Scotland, where 100 buses that held the slogan "United Against Extremism." There were 50 in Glasgow, 25 in Edinburgh, 25 in Dundee. So it was a horrific event, but I think in the modern day, unfortunately, horrific events aren't too scarce. What we need to do is how we then deal with it and make it into something positive if we can.
Thank you, Mansour. Let's speak to Nazir in Glasgow. 03459 440 445 is the phone number, or you can text 81869 or email nihal@bbc.co.uk. Nazir, good morning.
Hi, good morning. It's Nasser, actually.
Oh, it's Nasser. Sorry, Nasser. It's spelt Nazir, though, is it? Nasir?
Yeah, Nasser. That's it, Nasser.
Oh, okay. Nasser, I always think as Nasser, but there you go. That's a pronunciation.
Then you're thinking cricket.
That's yes, quite. Or Egyptians, of course. Egyptians would spell it in that way.
Yes.
But Nasser, tell me, now you're a Shia, okay?
Yeah.
Now, do you worry that the situation here is getting worse in terms of Muslim on Muslim hate crime? Do you think it's getting worse?
Nihal, let me start by saying this, that when Imam Ali, the fourth Caliph, took position in Khilafat, he wrote to his governors, and this is a letter. I'm just reading one line out of that. This is a letter which was actually quoted by Kofi Annan in the United Nations also several years ago. And in that letter which he wrote to the governors, he said that among you, there are two kinds of people. One, your brothers in faith, and secondly, your equals in humanity. Now, what he was referring to was your brothers in faith being your Muslim brothers, and equals in humanity, all the non-Muslims. And he went on to say that it is your responsibility to protect both of them. And then he went on to say that if their places of worship are in a place of disrepair, take money out of treasury to put them in a better position. Or if they are in such a state that they cannot be repaired, demolish them, erase them, and give them brand new places. Now, this is what we believe in. This is how we behave in society, and this is how any Muslim should behave in society. As you know, I come from Glasgow, and when this incident of Asad Shah took place, my father had literally passed away 2 days prior to that, and people were still sitting in my house, but I decided that evening that I shall be part of that vigil. Me and my family went and joined Nicola Sturgeon and others and stood there in silence, laying flowers and lighting candles in that vigil, because for me, that was not an Ahmadi or a Muslim or a non-Muslim. That was a brutal murder of an individual. Now, what I found in there was that among about 1,000 people, the vast majority of the people were non-Muslims. In an area where I would have thought that the Muslims would have been swarming there in that moment of that Asad Shah's family's need. That didn't happen. Now, coming back to the question that you're asking, is it getting worse? Yes, it is getting worse, and I'll tell you why it's getting worse. Because...
Just to be clear, you think it's getting worse Muslim on Muslim hate crime?
Yes, it is indeed, and I'll tell you why it is. I'll tell you very simply. What happened in Pakistan was the execution of Mumtaz Qadri, the man who assassinated a sitting governor some 5 years ago.
Salman Taseer.
Yeah, Salman Taseer. Mumtaz Qadri is hailed as a hero after his execution. thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people are going to his grave and paying respects there. There is a big box lying there where you can throw money.
So sorry, Nasser, to interrupt you, but are you saying it's getting worse in Pakistan, but it's not getting worse here, or are you saying it's getting worse here in the UK?
I'm just coming up to that. And what has happened is Mumtaz Qadri has set a precedent that you do not now need to have a belt around your waist to go and blow people up if you're not in a position to do so. But what you can do is go and kill somebody and stand there and let people or let police come and charge you, because you will now become a hero once you have done something like that. When this young man, Tanveer, came all the way from Bradford, he killed Asad Shah. He didn't run away. He actually stood there and
these are all allegations at the moment, Nasser. Remember that this is a live case.
I have seen this, sir.
Yes, but it's going through the courts. So we don't know. Let's not go into the details of this particular case.
Right. Okay. But what has happened is but what I have heard in the newspapers, what I have seen on Facebook, and what I have seen in some B and C class Pakistani tabloids, is that he is now being hailed as a ghazi, as a victor, as a hero. At the same time, what Mumtaz Qadri done in Pakistan, there are so many preachers, even in Britain, who will stand up and condemn, because this is only a right thing to do, to stand up politically and say we condemn all sorts of terrorism. But there are so many preachers who in private are calling him a victor and saying that this was the job of the Ummah, this was the job of all Muslims, that alone Mumtaz Qadri done. Now, when you start preaching this kind of thing in your sermon or in your privacy, what are you actually telling people? You are telling people that it is okay to go and do something like that because it's not against Islam. I, as a Shia, have most of my friends are Sunnis. We love each other. And now and again they will come and tell me that people, and especially people in hierarchy and the religious sector, have come and told them, why are you sitting with them? Do you know you cannot go and eat with them? Do you know you should not be associated with them? And what my worry as to your question is that yes, it will get worse because of this precedent where you go and kill somebody. Incidentally, we have a meeting with the police this evening. But what is worrying is that now people will take it upon themselves because of the preaching that they are getting, that they are not. I mean, people were, just before me, I heard a couple of the speakers saying why Ahmadi are classed as non-believers. Can anybody tell me why the Shias are classed as non-believers? And why the imams or imams from, perhaps, I'm not even naming any sects, are telling their congregation that we are non-believers? What exactly is it that
you think that's going on in the UK, where Muslims are saying Shias and Ahmadis and Sufis, they're non-Muslims? Do you think that's...
Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. It's in every city in the UK that this thing exists, even as much as in Glasgow. People are going about telling. I have people who form friendship with me. Halfway through the friendship, they tell me, and especially in this social media thing, people love me. People treat me as friends. Then they find out I am a Shia, and they say, "Oh, we thought Shias were this. We thought Shias were that." And I have to sit there with a cup of coffee in my hand and laugh at them and say, tell you what, fire away, ask me any question that you like, and then you decide what is it in us that makes us non-believers, what is it in us that makes us infidels, what is it in us that makes us non-believers, and they have no answer to that at all. And until such time as our preachers stand up and say, let us have hand, I mean, you're talking about Asad Shah here. Give you one another example. People actually, for many other reasons, condemned within the Muslim community, condemned his killing. But do you know when it came to his funeral? Other than one or two other Muslims, my brother, who's a counsellor, my brother actually went and attended the funeral and hugged his father and cried with his father, not because he was an Ahmadi, not because anything else, but because of the fact that an old man has lost a young son. Can we not do that? Can we not overlook all these things? And can we not embrace each other? This is what my religion teaches me, and this is what I will continue to teach my family and my children.
Well, it's a very, pessimistic outlook on the future here for Muslim communities and unity within Muslim communities. Nasser, stay with us, actually, because Rab has called in from Birmingham. Rab, good morning.
Hello there, good morning, Nihal.
How do we stop this? I mean, Nasser, as a Shia shopkeeper, he feels that it is going to get worse, that it is getting worse. Tell Mama UK, who of course records issues of hate crime against Muslims, is saying that it is on the rise, Muslim on Muslim hate crime.
Well, unfortunately, I'm of the opposite thought pattern. I believe that every person is equal, regardless of whether they're from my faith, another faith, or from no faith. And it's not my job to actually judge anybody. I can tell people what I believe. I can tell people what I think is right. And when somebody then comes along and tries to tell me they're right or that I'm in the wrong, then I get defensive. Well, up until that moment, I won't judge anybody and say, look, because you're Shia or you're Ahmadi or you're or whatever, that you're going to go to the hell and I'm not, because I might be the first one there. Only Allah knows whether I'm going to go to hell or not.
So you would never say that an Ahmadi or a Shia is not a Muslim?
I wouldn't say to them that they're not a Muslim. I will say to them that I don't believe that their interpretation is what I believe to be right.
Right.
And whether they wish to then challenge that or not. Like, for example, your first speaker that you had on, who said that it says in the Quran that you should follow the faith of your father. If he had gone on to actually explain what that actually means, or what that verse says, what it means by the faith of your father is we consider our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to be our father. So the faith that he brought is the faith that we follow, not the father that you're born from. So the same, we call his wife, we call her our mother. So the thing is that interpretation, you see, is where all the confusion is. Now, I could be completely on the wrong pattern, or maybe he's on the wrong pattern, but it's not anybody's position to harm anybody just because they've got different belief or thought pattern. Now, the reason I called in wasn't for that reason. I called in because the question was, how can we
stop it? Yes, go on.
Now, nearly every speaker you've had on, except for the one lady who spoke really nicely, who said that I'm just a Muslim. All the others actually said, I'm a Shia, I'm an Ahmadi, I'm a Sunni. Now, they consider themselves to be wanting to be same as anybody else, but yet they want to segregate themselves by calling themselves a Sunni, a Shia, or a
Excuse me, sir, but I did not call myself a Shia at all.
Right? So by them calling themselves, they're segregating themselves. If somebody asks me, what are you? I'll say, I am just a Muslim. I won't say whether I'm a Salafi, whether I'm a Sunni, whether I'm a Wahabi, or whether I'm an Ahmadi, or whatever. Right? I consider it as I'm a Muslim, and that should be the end of the matter. It shouldn't be, if somebody then, says to me, why do you pray a particular way? Like, for example, when I pray and we go on to bow down or whatever, I say out aloud, Allahu Akbar. Right? Now, some people, when I go to certain mosques, I'll go to any mosque if it's on my way, if I'm going to be late for my prayer, and stop. It doesn't matter what sect that mosque is, because the way I see it is, I'm going to pray to my God. It doesn't matter that it's in a mosque, right, or which mosque it is. So when I'm there and I'm following the imam, for example, I don't pray the way the imam wishes to pray. I pray the way I believe is the right way. So when they say Allahu Akbar, I'll say out aloud Allahu Akbar. And then I've been questioned by people at the end of the prayer that why did you say out aloud? And I'll say, well, this is what I believe. And they'll say, no, that's wrong. You shouldn't say it like that. And then I have to end up in a debate with them. The thing is, everybody's a hypocrite. All the imams are hypocrites. The people who came on the radio are hypocrites. Because what they don't understand, what they don't want to say is that they consider themselves to be different. If they all said, we are just Muslim, like the one lady you had on.
Yeah, but wait a minute. No, Rab, there's nothing wrong with saying you're different. Being different doesn't mean that you have a right to discriminate against someone. I'm different to you. I'm proud of being of my Sri Lankan roots, but I'm not saying I'm better than you because of it.
But the thing is, you would consider me to be wrong, otherwise you would be a Muslim, Nihal. I consider you to be wrong, otherwise
No, I don't. No. Wait a minute, Rab, that's where your arrogance of religion comes from, Rab. And you've just exposed yourself. You've just exposed yourself. Because I tell you what, Rab, from my religious perspective, I just think that religion is a personal thing, and my truth is not your truth. And I don't think your truth is any less of a truth because you believe it. Whereas you think my truth is wrong, which makes you arrogant and doesn't make me arrogant.
There can only be one truth.
No, there can't be. No, there can't be, Rab, because Hinduism, for instance, which I'm not a Hindu, but believes there are many paths to God. So what are you saying?
I believe that they're actually wrong. I believe that they're
that's
wrong.
Arrogant. That's arrogant.
No, it's not.
It is arrogant. It's completely arrogant. No, Rab. It is not the truth. It is your truth. It is your personal truth.
In that case, you should be an atheist, because you should then consider that there is no truth, because you can't say
that's not
the right way. That's why you follow me.
That's theories. Religions are theories. Religions are beliefs. Religions you hold in your heart and your soul, and you have every right to believe them. But do not impose that on everybody else, Rab.
You believe in your God, don't you?
I believe in what I was brought up to believe in.
No. Answer the question. You believe in your God, don't
you? Buddhism technically doesn't have a God. But wait a minute. I'll be clear with you. Buddhism doesn't have a God.
Okay. Whatever you believe in, you believe in whatever you believe in. You don't believe in Allah, do you? If you believe in Allah, then you would be a Muslim. So obviously you don't consider.
But that doesn't make me wrong. That doesn't make me wrong, and it doesn't make you wrong that you believe in a God.
That is what you see.
Because I'm slightly more grown up than you, Rab.
Everybody wants to be diplomatic. I'm not.
No, I'm not being diplomatic. I'm being honest. I'm being completely honest. Just because you can't be anything other than dogmatic, i.e., you think that everything you believe in is right. Now, how can that be anything but arrogant?
That I believe in is right.
That's exactly what you've just said. If you believe. God, good. You can't even keep up with yourself. If you believe that I'm wrong, then you must, by definition, believe you're right.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, then that's arrogance.
I do. No, I do. It's not arrogance. It's that I've done my research and I believe my path is the right path.
Good for you.
Yeah, and
that's your path. I believe. You said I believe. There you go. It's personal.
So then why are you a Buddhist?
Because I believe in it.
Thank you. You've answered.
But I don't. But I don't believe you're wrong, whereas you believe I'm wrong.
You believe I'm wrong. Otherwise, you'd be a Muslim, and you wouldn't be a Buddhist.
No, that's not the truth.
Or a Sikh or a Hindu or a Jew or whatever.
No, I wouldn't, because I believe that everybody has. Because if your God, Allah, created you with free will to make decisions, then you can make your own decision about what you think is right and what you think is the afterlife, and whether you believe in reincarnation or whether you don't, or whether you. I mean, that's up to you. Yes, that's completely up to you. Whereas you believe I'm wrong.
Who chooses a faith, Nihal, chooses that faith because they believe that's the right way.
So then you believe. So you believe Shias is wrong. But wait a minute. But I can believe in Tottenham Hotspur, and I don't. And people support Arsenal, but I don't tell them they should support Tottenham Hotspur. I just say, well, that's your choice.
Tottenham Hotspur is not going to take you to heaven or hell. There's a difference.
Well, if we win the Premier League, it'll take me to heaven. Don't worry about that.
You can believe in things that are materialistic, but we're talking about what you believe in is how you lead your life.
Nasser, can I ask you, do you believe that people who don't believe in Islam are wrong?
No, I don't at all.
So then you should be an atheist.
Can I just say, Nihal, I started my conversation by quoting you something out of what Imam Ali had wrote. There are two people, and there is one your brothers in faith, and that is the Muslims, and that you're equals in humanity. So if everybody is equal in humanity, how can I interpret that different?
A person is equal. We're talking about faith. We're not talking about harming somebody or.
So faiths are not equal. Rab. Just to be clear, faiths are not equal to you.
Sorry?
Faiths are not equal to you.
Faiths are not equal to me. And if they were,
how very enlightened and open-minded of you.
They would be lying. Everybody's a liar.
I'm a liar, am I?
Everybody's a liar who believes that every faith is equal, because then there wouldn't be a particular faith. There would be all faiths.
well, why would Allah or why would God give us a brain to think if they just wanted us all to be exactly the same? Why would they give us a choice to make different choice about what we wear and different languages we speak and different forms of love and different these and different that, and some people like yellow and some people like green and some people like going out and camping and some people like luxury holidays? Why would they give us any of these choices? They'd surely God would have created us all as clones, and that we all believe the same. Okay, Rab, I think you've exposed yourself enough today as what you believe and what you don't believe. Huda Jawad is a community activist and Shia Muslim. Huda, it's interesting that, isn't it, that discourse that I just had with Rab, because that goes to the heart of division in religion.
Yes, I guess what, for me, it just illustrates the need for religious literacy, really, when people are talking about what they believe personally and what they think about others. But I feel, my condolences to the family for their loss of their family member and their son, but also it's just indicative of like how serious things are, and we need to, as a community, a diverse community from different, as we've been discussing, backgrounds, sects, ethnicity and linguistic traditions, that we really need to show unity and solidarity and remind ourselves of what your penultimate caller who quoted the hadith of Imam Ali, that we are all human beings at the end of the day, and that's what matters, and we have an equal right to life free from violence and safety. So
the problem is, and this is interesting, is that if you feel that what you do is right and someone else is wrong, then that is the beginning of the kind of division that at its extreme end ends up in the murdering of a shopkeeper in Glasgow, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's that linear, to be honest. I think certainly if your starting point is that everybody else is wrong and then you're right, then you're going to have a harder time accepting difference. I grew up in the Middle East where diversity wasn't talked about, it wasn't promoted, it was seen as something that wasn't appropriate, and that you only had one path and that was it. And if you didn't agree, then that's, you'd have a dialogue like your last caller. And in autocratic government, you could end up with not just only negativity, but and discrimination, and also it could ultimately cost you your life. And as we've seen, globally, the kind of sectarian killings across the world of different Muslims within the global Muslim community, as illustrated by the targeting of Shia Muslims across the world, Ahmadiyyas, all sorts of people who are, all these labels that are used to excuse the murder of people. But I think it is not an inevitable path that if you don't agree with difference, then you're ultimately going to end up condoning or allowing violence and murder. But I do think that what would lead you to that is the lack of awareness, exposure, and personal contact,
Huda,
human contact.
We're going to have to leave it there, but Huda, thank you. Good to speak to you.
The sound of Asian Britain.
On digital radio and on your mobile. This is BBC Asian Network.
We're going to speak to Ali in Manchester in a bit. I've got to say, I think I find that profoundly depressing. You've got every right to believe in what you want to believe, but don't think everyone's wrong. How insecure must a faith be, any faith, to think of it as being the only truth? How arrogant is that? Surely we think about things. The reason we do a debate show is because we don't just want to hear what people think. The most interesting thing about hosting a debate show is when people get in contact with you and said that changed my mind, that changed my thinking. Because I came to it with a prejudice, and then that prejudice came. But imagine if you just spend your life just thinking everyone else is wrong and you're right. Think about how unpleasant a human being that would be if your mate in everything thought they were right in everything and that you were wrong in everything. It's weird, isn't it? Oh well, get in contact with me. Tell me what you think. How do we stop Muslim-on-Muslim hate crime happening? We're going to just carry this on a little bit after the news, so if you want to get your point across, especially after what you've heard in the last 10 minutes or so, then do get in contact with us. Okay? All right. coming up after that, we're going to be speaking to Kapil Lakhani. He is our fitness guru. It's a Wednesday, it's the second hour, which means that any exercise-related questions, you want to lose a bit of fat before that, so you want to tone up, or in fact very specific technical questions about your gym routine, he can answer all of those, okay? So get your calls into him on 03459 440 445. All of that to come after the news with Ushma Mystery.
Thanks, Nihal. Ahmadis in the UK have been telling Asian Network about their fears of being targeted by extremist Muslims. It comes after leaflets calling for the killing of the minority sect were found at a mosque in South London. Anisa, not her real name, fled to the UK from Pakistan in 2014 after her neighbours threatened to kill her because she was an Ahmadi.
They do not consider us Muslim, but we are Muslim. God knows better. Once I was outside, they said, we will cut you into pieces, we will break your legs, and we will even cut your neck. Then we will become satisfied.
Ushma, thank you very much indeed for that. Right, let's speak to Ali in Manchester. Ali, good morning.
Good morning, Nihal.
How do we stop this Muslim or Muslim hate crime? It's quite interesting. We're getting some kind of people going on about there's no such thing or whatever.
I just want to start off by saying that, from my point of view, this is my personal opinion, is that this particular issue starts and ends with one particular point that I want to make, which is that who are we to judge if somebody is right or wrong as far as religion is concerned? That's my first point. Okay. In terms of the actual issue that you raised this morning, how do we stop hate crime, Muslim on Muslim? I think some of this responsibility lies with the Muslim scholars that are out there in the UK, for example, who have thousands, if not hundreds, of followers that they see on a weekly basis. They deliver sermons to, and these people need to take some responsibility for what is happening out there currently. The other point that I want to make based on this is that, for my example, for example, I have lots of friends from different communities, different religions, different backgrounds. And one thing, for example, I'm a Sunni Muslim, but if I sit with a Shia Muslim or, with an Ahmadi or with a Christian even, one of the things that we very rarely do is discuss religion. And that is because we all respect each other's views and beliefs, and these are things that we've been brought up with. And these are the types,
and they're personal to you, presumably.
Yes, and these are personal to us. And we've got to appreciate each other's views, beliefs, and how they've been brought up. It's very difficult to change somebody that's been brought up from a very young age believing in certain things, to then all of a sudden say to them, well, actually, something that you've believed in all your life is wrong. Okay, because that's all they know, for example, and that's what they've been brought up with. So the issues that we've got, amongst the Muslims, it's not just Ahmadis, Sunnis, Shias, Wahhabis. These sects are fighting each other internally as well. Okay? Yeah. Because you've got, for example, in Sunni, Sunni Muslims, I know, for example, you've got all these different groups that have different agendas to do with different things. Okay, you've got the ones that have got the softer approach on Islam, who like myself, believe that we should integrate and we should mix with people and we should appreciate each other. And then you've got the other part of it. The other extreme is the ones that are going out. This thing with Mumtaz Qadri, for example. There's lots of people who say, he's a martyr and he's this and he's that. My view is, and people I've spoken to, their views are, and I've spoken to Muslim scholars with regards to this as well, and had a debate with them. And what they're actually saying to me is, and it's something I do believe in, is that if you commit a crime and if you murder somebody, you will be duly punished for that particular crime. Okay, regardless of whether he did it for religious reasons or he said this person was to do with blasphemy or whatever it was, we should not be the judge of that. Okay, as individuals, and that should be left down to Allah. Allah is the one that we believe in, and the one that we say He is the highest of the highest, and He's the most divine. And we leave everything to Him. We pray to Him. Okay, so these types of things should be left to Him to decide, and shouldn't be something that we should be making quick judgments on and pushing other agendas. And that's where extremism starts to come into religion. Okay. Now, without this, I don't want to discriminate against any particular sect, but there is certain sects out there that are pushing the extremism sort of agenda. Okay, and what I'm trying to say is that we as Muslims need to get our own house in order before we're able to go out there and sell the real Islam to the non-Muslims, because we've got a battle going on at the minute in the UK. For example, the media portray Muslims, unfortunately, in a certain light in most cases. And I'm talking about national newspapers. I'm talking about national media outlets. That's the battle that we should be fighting to begin with. To say, look, this is not the real Islam. This is the real Islam.
But until you can find unity amongst the different Muslim communities, Ali, wouldn't it be the case that you will be easily divided and then ruled over? I mean, divide and rule, etc., etc. So as long as they're...
I totally agree, Nihal, and this is one of the points I made just now. What I said was that we need to get our own house in order.
Yeah, of course.
As Muslims, before we're able to go out there and say this is what Islam is all about. Okay, until such a point, we're having internal battles, and like I said to you, these are not just battles in between Sunnis and Shias and Ahmadis. These are internal battles between each particular sect, for example. So I know, for example, in the Sunni sect, there's so many different groups these days, but these groups have appeared over the last 5 or 10 years. Okay, previously to that, when I was growing up, for example, you were a Sunni, okay, or you were a Shia, or you were an Ahmadi, or or a Wahhabi, or whatever. Those were the sort of 4 main sects that I grew up with. These days, you've got offshoots of every single part of. So in Sunni Muslims, there's so many different types now. So you've got the Qadiris, for example, you've got the Naqshbandis, you've got the Chishtis, you've got all these different types. Okay, and everybody is pushing their own agenda. Now, one of the things I will say is that about 4 weeks ago, I'm not sure if you're aware, there was a World Sufi conference held in India, which was hosted, funnily enough, by the Prime Minister of India. Okay, and this was held in Delhi, and it was a 3-day sort of conference to do with Sufism and predominantly Sunni Islam and the message of peace and the message of love and these types of things.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah.
And one of the reasons why this was held was to try and raise the profile of the Islam that I believe in, for example, which is all about peace and love and everything else. Okay?
Can I just stop you? Can I just interrupt you for a second? So I want to bring Sam in from London, who's called in. Sam, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Now, is it true you don't regard Ahmadis and Shias to be Muslims?
To be honest, I'm not a strict Muslim, but yeah, I mean, the agendas that they do have, it's very dividing, and it's, to be honest with you, it's quite offensive.
Sorry, you find Ahmadis and Shias, you find their beliefs offensive?
Quite offensive, yeah. I mean, how are you supposed to, walk together, bind as one? And yeah, to be honest with you, yeah, there is an element of divide and rule going on as well. But there's some people that are so stupid that just don't really understand what they're actually getting themselves into or what they're doing.
So why don't you regard Ahmadis and Shias to be Muslims, and why do you find their views offensive?
Well, first of all, I mean, the Imam that you had on, the first caller you had on, he said, the last point he made was, by the way, the Quran doesn't say the last prophet was Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad wasn't the last prophet. It's not true, because the basics of the Quran, the basics of being a Muslim is that you believe that the prophet was the last prophet. It's just, if you want to live together, if you want to, say that you're a Muslim, you have to have some basics that, are similar. I think that's quite offensive, to be honest with you.
Okay, Sam, stay with us. Haziq Rahman joins us, who's called in. Haziq, good morning.
Good morning, Nihal. How are you?
Good. You've just heard Sam say that your views as an Ahmadi are offensive to her.
That's her opinion, and she's entitled to it. But this is the heart of this debate this morning about how do we stop Muslim on Muslim hate crime from happening. Now, we're not we're not suggesting for a second that Sam would go out, would we, Sam? You wouldn't go out and actively, hate on a Ahmadi, but you do find them offensive. You do find their views offensive, don't you? That's what you said.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Haziq?
So there are theological differences.
which if I go into it now, I think we'll be here for hours, Nihal. But the reason I wanted to quote you a verse from Holy Quran, and that's the reason I called in mainly, but I've got a few other points as well.
Well, if you don't mind, just leave the verses from the Holy Quran because we don't have a lot of time. Let's get to the point of this. Why do you... No quoting from the Quran. Why do... Because we haven't got time. Why don't we have more unity, do you think, Haziq Rahman? Have you ever visited a non-Ahmadi mosque?
I have, and I have... and
what was it like?
I wanted to share my experience.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you. What was it like?
Yeah, sure. So it wasn't obvious that I was an Ahmadi. I didn't have a problem. But I have experienced, and my family have experienced, quite a lot of persecution, or in my case, it wasn't persecution, it was kind of...
Not here in the UK?
In the UK, I've experienced some discrimination at workplace.
Tell me, sorry, Haziq, tell me your experience, not you and your family, your personal experience of going to a non-Ahmadi mosque. How were you treated?
Not in the mosque. I'm saying in general. I've been to university events where the whole event was to defend the beautiful teachings of Islam. And what do I see? There's a guy out there right in front of the actual hall giving out leaflets, which is exactly what was reported by BBC a couple of days back, saying that Ahmadis are apostates and apostates are to be killed. And I'm pretty sure some would find it more offensive than what we were doing. What the program, I think, ironically, was why Islam is a peaceful religion or something along those lines. And right outside it, this guy in a university giving out this leaflet. I had that experience. And on another day, I went out with my friends to give out this leaflet.
Yes? Haziq? You still there? We seem to have lost Haziq Rahman there. Sam, the problem is there is clearly a division. I've spoke to a Shia shopkeeper who believes it's getting worse here. Someone else called in and said it's getting worse, and we're talking about Muslim on Muslim hate crime, Sam. Surely Muslims, regardless of theologically whether you believe everything they believe, if they say they are Muslims, Sam, shouldn't you accept that? After all, it is not your job to judge them, is it?
No, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I'm not an extreme Muslim, to be honest with you, myself. My children have got a liberal view on Islam, even though they're studying probably more than what I did back in my day. Because my dad wasn't very religious person. But to be honest with you, as you grow up and as you, from experience, from the knowledge, you kind of gather and you kind of think, okay, right, this is what the problem is. Now you understand what the problem is. For instance, we've got the Shias who keep everything, closed down, but the interior motive is that they want to bring down the Kaaba, which initially is the actual, it's the soul of the pilgrimage. I mean, it's not viable, is it? I mean, at the end of the day, they want us to go to Iraq to make that the main pilgrimage. How is this going to go down with the normal, Islamic public or the Ummah? I just don't understand how this is going to work. I mean, if you're going to unite and live in peace, you need to have some kind of boundary.
So in order for there to be unity in the Muslim community, everybody has to agree with the mainstream Sunni version of Islam, is what you're saying?
I mean, they're the majority. I mean, even there's a saying as well that, sometimes you've just got to join hands with the enemy. I mean,
Sam, I don't know, what's your ethnic background?
I'm a Pakistani.
Okay, so you're a Pakistani. I'm of Sri Lankan heritage. We're minorities in this country. Now, as a Pakistani, does that mean because this country drinks alcohol and eats pork that you should do that because you're a minority?
To be honest with you, I don't really consider myself as a Pakistani. I mean, I'm now third generation here. My children are fourth generation.
Oh, okay. Right.
It doesn't really make no difference. To be honest with you, I've got the liberal views, but sometimes you do have a full stop to what you want your children to know.
Do you know what's interesting? Is you say that I have liberal views, and yet you find Ahmadi and Shia, their opinions, offensive. Now, some people listening might not find that particularly liberal by definition.
I mean, I want everybody to join hands. I want everybody to get along with each other. But if you're going to, deliberately go around, I mean, we know that the Ahmadis don't live side by side, whereas, I know.
What do you mean? Sorry, they don't live side by side. What do you mean?
They don't integrate with normal people. They don't, they keep hideaways. They have nighttime mosque meetings with their head imams, etc. I mean, I know a few friends who got mixed up with these people who didn't actually say they were Ahmadis, and then one of their sons died in a car accident, and then when their family came down to pay their respects, they found out that they were Ahmadis. And
why do you think they hid that?
It's not accepted, is it? It's not acceptable. I mean, they're actually classed as non-Muslims. They're actually classed as non-Muslims because they don't believe in the Prophet. The last Prophet was the Prophet.
They do believe in the Prophet Muhammad. They 100% believe in the Prophet Muhammad.
They believe that the founder of that religion is the last Prophet in their religion.
They believe that the Prophet Muhammad is the last law-bearing prophet of Islam. That's what they believe, that he is the last law-bearing prophet.
Yeah, but they've got other prophets as well on the end of it, because I know a few people who like to say their bits, but they're not really sure. Even they're in the religion, but they're not even sure about what they believe in either.
So it's quite interesting because it's you've been brought up to believe that Ahmadis are a secretive sect who don't live side by side with you. That's what you've been brought up to believe, isn't it?
To be honest with you, I actually got mixed up with these people some time ago.
With these people?
They actually hate Sunnis. They hate the Shias. They don't really like mingling with their people. They don't like talking to them. So I think it's the other way around. I don't think it's. I think because the Sunnis are the majority.
Can you give me an example where an Ahmadi has murdered a Sunni or a Shia?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't really know. I mean, but I do know that they don't like...
I can give you plenty of examples where Ahmadis have been murdered.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're persecuted in Pakistan and stuff.
Right, but you just said, Sam, that they're the ones who hate. They're the ones who hate Sunnis and Shias, and yet I can't think of an example where an Ahmadi has killed a Sunni or a Shia in sectarian sense. I can't think of an example of that. So would you admit then that perhaps you've got it wrong?
I don't know. I mean, my personal experience is that they're not accepting. I mean, even though I've got some friends that got involved with these people. I mean, like the example I gave you, at the funeral, they ended up having a divorce because they found out they were Ahmadis. But the sheer fact is that trust and you've got to be very what's the space? You've got to be very precise about what you want, what religion you want. Be very firm on what you believe in. Hiding it and going about, being. I think word is not honest. Getting into places like that. I mean, I know it's a one-off incident and stuff, but I think it's happening quite a lot. And I think they believe that it's not right, and they're hiding it away by having secret meetings and hiding themselves away. And they
don't have. Okay, well, can I just let's. I am jest, right? Let's look, shall we? Okay. Now, if you put in Ahmadiyya Mosque into a search engine, it will give you. I've just found 3 immediately. 3 addresses for these mosques. Yeah, there's one in East Midlands, in London. I mean, they hardly seem to be hiding themselves away, Sam, as you say. I mean, it's interesting because your views, I'm the presenter of this show, so I challenge people's views wherever they come from. Your views don't really have any basis in truth, Sam, and you have to accept that. They're not hiding themselves away, Sam.
To be honest with you, I've had. I did when this incident happened with the the little boy that got run over. I mean, I ended up phoning a couple of Ahmadiyya mosques, and that's where I found their numbers from online. They were so discreet about sharing any information or even having a conversation with me on the phone. It was purely basic. It was just the fact that, do you believe that you guys should integrate like this and tear people's lives apart when you know you're not supposed to. People just hung up on me. Or they were like, well, who are you from? You know, where are you from? Are you from the press? Etc. Etc. It was just so, indignifying. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean,
can you understand? Can you understand perhaps why the Ahmadi community would be quite defensive? Because there are people such as yourself. I mean, many times in this conversation, Sam, you've said these people. These people. You've said it like that, and obviously not in a positive way. And you've talked about them being secretive, and that you find their views offensive. Is it any wonder that they would be defensive?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think they've brought it up on themselves. I mean, if they're not going to, the fact of the matter is, I think most of these people, I mean, I do say it because I truly do believe that, they don't read the Kalma as it is, because they don't believe the Prophet is the last prophet. And I think that's just purely offensive, and I think that's what the problem is.
Okay.
And I think that's where it begins and that's where it finishes, to be honest with you. And I think that's why I feel like this as well. So
I think it's worth perhaps, though, challenging yourself a bit and trying to learn a little bit more about the Ahmadi community, because you said that you've made comments like they hate Sunnis and Shias, and yet when I asked you to provide any examples, it's all well and good to have feelings, but if your feelings are opinions which you believe to be true, then you must search out the truth. And like I said, to the best of my knowledge, and I've been doing this show for some years, I've never heard of Ahmadis. And if they hate Sunnis and Shias so much, why are they not indulging in revenge attacks on Sunnis and Shias? That doesn't seem to be happening. So I would just encourage you to just look a little bit more into it and perhaps have some more conversations with Ahmadi people if you wish to. But thank you for joining us on the show today, Sam. It's fascinating to hear your opinions on that. We started by asking the question, how do we stop Muslim on Muslim hate crime? Jyoti is from North Somerset, lastly, and has called in. Good morning, Jyoti.
Good morning, Nihal. I think that lady, as she said, she's third generation over here. She seems to have very sort of strange racist views. Like, she's an alien among people and everyone else, or that the others are aliens. Now, if she had actually taken the time to go to a meeting, as she said, she knows whatever and whoever, she would learn something. I'm a Hindu. I have gone to several meetings, not in my department, but in another department where I work. There was an Ahmadiyya, they were about 3 sisters that worked there. And they were the most polite and enlightened people you can imagine. And they are third generation, British or second generation. As I said, they encourage people to come and, talk, to listen to them. They never promoted their religion at work. They would just say, we have this meeting going, and we used to go, just to find out a bit more about it. Now, my mom's neighbors are Muslim. One comes from Hyderabad. They speak Urdu.
So what do they identify themselves as, Jyoti? Do they identify themselves as Sunni or Shia?
No, but they are Muslim. And you know something? We'd go to their functions. We would help them cook, whatever. But we never found that they were different to any other person, like a Tamil person, maybe living.
So everyone was equal.
Way.
Everyone was equal as far as
we were not equal, but we learned to learn from each other. Are you with me? And the same, this is why it didn't harm me or feel that I shouldn't go to a Jehovah's Witness meeting or go to a Ahmadiyya meeting, which I learned a lot. And there were lots of speakers from different sects, and I'm sure, and they they were quite learned people that were on the stage talking, and I enjoyed every bit of that meeting.
Jyoti, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed. Lots of texts and emails to read out. Hi, it's Danny from Leicester. My old boss used to say 3 things you don't ask in religion, politics and football team. Rajiva said, problem is the large uneducated population that resides in the Muslim countries who are brainwashed by the unscrupulous imams that reside in or run the mosques. Hi Nihal, as a 40-year-old British practicing Muslim, I've never heard of an Ahmadi until I listened to the BBC Asian Network. Thanks from Abu. Oh, there you go. Okay, well, learned something. Ahmed said, Ahmadis are not Muslims, Sunnis are not Muslims, Shias are not Muslims, Qadianis are not Muslims, Muslims are Muslims. Simple as that. We've been told about this 1400 years ago that in the future the Muslim group will be divided into 70-odd sections. Can't remember exact figure, but it's around 70. I think you should send young, educated scholars who will go into mosques and places of education and talk to people and change their backward views, says Hannah in Bradford. Shahid in Manchester said it's totally against the teachings of Islam to use violence on followers of other faiths, and I think most strict action should be taken against mosques and their leaders for preaching hate and violence towards Shias and Ahmadis. I would mention here that when I came to the UK in 1995, I was invited loads of times to an Ahmadi mosque in Manchester, and I sat there with Ahmadi people and shared food. I was most welcome every time. By the way, I am Shia Muslim and everyone knew I was Shia and they didn't even try to convert me, says Shahid. Subs has said, hi Nihal, I just want to say, what happened to live and let live? Everyone should be able to practice what they want as long as they are not hurting, you let them be. We're all going to go in our own graves, an individual judge, not as Sunni, Shia or anything else. People just like to pick out the bits that suit them. Let them be. Jolly said, listening to your show, I want to say, how can you integrate with Muslims when you have a two-faced person like Rab? I used to think he was a good man, but actually he's just as bad as others with hate views against anyone who's not Muslim. They can't get on with each other. Why should others tolerate them or their religion? It makes me so angry. When I was at uni, I dated an Ahmadi guy and I was a Wahhabi. We dated for 5 years and planned to marry, and his family was the one that didn't want me rather than the other way round. Okay, it's interesting. Everyone here has the right to believe what they want. One destination has many paths. Whether you call him Allah, Waheguru, Lord, etc., etc., there's only one God. We must respect everyone's religion and believe, especially in this day and age. Rabbi's basically saying you're either Muslim or an atheist. Oh my God, no pun intended. As in Lancashire said, as a Muslim, I say Rab is an embarrassment to the religion of Islam. Muslim or not, we're all created by God and are his creation. We are all equal. Nihal, really offended by Rab's comments. Irony, his name is Rab, Punjabi for God. Well handled, says Munveer. Nihal, sir, I write this as someone born into a Muslim household, and your conversation has superbly demonstrated why Islamization is one of the biggest threats to society and humanity. And lastly, Abdul said, regarding the call of Rab started calling yourself Sunni, Shia or Ahmadi makes one hypocritical is misconceived. If Muslims were to rid themselves of such labels, this would not lead to unity. Unity comes through dialogue, understanding and acceptance that we may not always agree with one another on each and every issue, but that we do hold common beliefs, and those common beliefs are more than those issues that we differ on.